Okay. Hi, everyone. This is Extreme Freeze Tag. Our group name is Brain Freezers. I'm Josh, the producer. We have Layla, the 3D artist, Jacob Picard, the programmer, and Jacob Scoggins, the level designer. For our Trello statistics, we had 92 assigned user stories for the entire semester. 91 went into to verify, 91 was incomplete, and only one is still left for assigned. Now I'm going to pass it off to Jacob Scoggins for what went wrong.
So we did have quite a bit of things that went wrong, and one thing that wasn't technically an issue, but a challenge we had to tackle or come to accept because of the design aspect of the game. So the first thing that went wrong was that our team prioritized other classes, or the workload for those classes was so large for the semester that it basically hindered the development process of the game. Another issue we had was that we were a little too flexible, and we kind of didn't really take the whole workload too seriously, and we fell into the trap of it'll get done when it gets done. And one other issue was that there wasn't a clear vision of the game from the beginning to the end, and it just meant that the scope was too small. So we had to basically think of things that the game needed to have for it to be more complete. Next slide, please. Thank you. We spent too much time improving the first level of the game, which led to only two levels being made. And we had planned out those other levels, but as we were getting close to the end, we were like, we're only going to be able to get two levels in. So because of that, we only have two levels. Some of the tasks that were given to us that were assigned were not properly explained, and it led to confusion when trying to get the work done. And this is a problem for everybody. And like I stated earlier, the game did not get the prioritization it needed at the beginning of production. So as a result, the workflow was a little slow at the beginning. Next slide, please. Final problems. The modular pieces for the North Pole level made by Layla had to be fixed several times because of maybe the pieces were a little too small or a little too big, and the UVs looked weird, so the textures came out wrong. So every time those issues needed to be addressed, it meant that Layla had to go back and fix them, and then I had to recreate the models in that level. Um, this was the challenge of the game because it our game requires at least two people to play, and most other games that are being play tested normally require one. So it meant that we had to find two people to play our game in order to get proper feedback. And because of the situation going on right now, it's kind of hard to do that. Cards assigned in Trello were not articulated well, so it meant that if a specific task needed to be done, it was a little vague or a little too general. So those cards could have been broken down a little bit better. Now Layla will be talking about what went right in our development process.
Thank you. Thank you, Jacob, for what went right. The game had a simple premise that made the level design and modeling pretty straightforward, and the feedback and constructive criticism we got allowed us to improve aspects of the game in many different ways. Each member of the team also had experience in their roles, which made it so that we could create work that functioned well together. And what also went right is that our team quickly realized that one of our core features needed to be changed so that the game could be better enjoyed. And this allowed us to make the game more realistic to the circumstances we were under. Finally, we also added a two-player mode pretty early on, which made the game more accessible to playtesters. And overall, everyone was very flexible with the game design during the duration of our development. And now Jacob will talk about what we would do differently and what we would do again.
Thank you, Layla. So essentially, one of our things is that it's always good to look for things to improve with your work, but at the same time, we can't just spend all our time on one thing. And in this case, we spent a lot of time working on level 1 instead of working on new features or new maps. So obviously not ideal. Another thing we would have done differently is that at some points in our project, it came across that there would be conflict because there were problems arising. with our management style, and that it isn't worth avoiding conflict to not raise those items up for discussion. Those have to be talked about, otherwise the problem's just going to persist. And lastly, it would be better if we had more measurable user stories to test for completeness, which means we had some kind of vaguely articulated user stories, such as as a player, I want to be able to select which character I want to play as, which is fairly ambiguous, and you don't. It doesn't let you know when you're finished with that feature. So just a bit better articulated cards could have helped going forwards. Next, we're going to talk about what we would do again, and actually there was quite a few things that were very useful to our development, namely the Agile Scrum strategies, where, if taken seriously, are very effective at managing a group of people and getting everyone on the same page in development. Another thing crucial to our project was gathering feedback. Without that, we wouldn't know what was not working in our game, what was broken, what was working, which is also very important to know. So without the feedback, we wouldn't know any of these things, and we wouldn't be able to improve our game to the degree we were able to. And lastly, Trello. It's just an awesome tool. It works well with the sort of agile and cyclical design of the iterative design style we've learned in CAGD. It's modular and allows us to kind of change things on the fly, so it's very useful in this case. And now I'm going to pass it back to Josh to talk about what we did in our last sprint.
Yeah, so for our last sprint, I had gone into Arena 2 and just put in the assets that Layla had given us. So the lava pits, the fences, a lot of that good stuff. I also went in and put in just every bit of box clutter that you could imagine for the cave system, the fences, the border walls. Without them, the player was literally able to clip through both the walls and even the floor at times if you were lucky enough. At this point, the player will have a lot harder time getting out of the map. I am sure the player will find a way to get out of this map, but it's not easily done. And besides for that, I will pass it off to Jacob to talk about his level design.
Thank you, Josh. So during the last sprint, I was able to complete the basic design of the second level, which we'll be calling the Snowman Hell level. In addition, I was able to add lighting to not only that level, but the first level as well. In the Snowman Hell level, I added lighting around the lava pits so it looked more realistic. And in the North Pole level, is what we're calling Arena 1, I've added new assets made by Layla that have added light fixtures across the map, so the map looks less dark and more vivid and more lively. Inside each of the buildings, there are small wall fixtures that illuminate lights, so if players choose to go inside the buildings, they can see where they're going. In regards to the Snowman Hell level, their lighting on that level in general, it's bright enough for players to see where they're going in the caves, but dark enough to fit the overall tone of the game. And in the next slide, we can see the evolutions of the two levels. So from the far left, you can see how we started off with fairly primitive and basic designs, very blocky designs. And then as we go over to the middle and to the far right, we can see as the design aspect gets more complex and more structured out. And in the final screenshots to the far right, those are the final versions of the game. As you can see, there's a more complex, more finished version of the levels. We have a vision there. Um, Even though we only got 2 levels done, I am proud of the work I was able to achieve. I think it took, even though I am the level designer for the game, I do believe that it was a combined efforts of all 4 of us that was able to get these levels to the quality that they're at today. So now I'll be passing it off to Layla so she can talk about what she did during the final sprint.
Thank you, Jacob. So during the final sprint, I created the poster and game name cover for the game. I also created a splash screen to show the player that they need 2 or 4 Xbox controllers in order to play the game. I also edited the trailer for the game and helped get animations into the game for the snowmen by helping our programmer Jacob with learning how to use the animator, as well as providing some basic code for how to get animations to start, stop in a script. And now Jacob will talk about what he did as the programmer.
Thank you, Layla. So I did end up getting quite a bit done for our final sprint. As you can see, I got spawning and respawning, and this is in regards to after a player selected what character they wanted to play as, they could now spawn into the level correctly with that player. And then there was a lot of bug fixes that I did. However, none of them were amusing or interesting, so I won't bore you with those details. But I did also implement a live system, so players, as you can see on the bottom right GIF, that players can take when they get tagged, they lose a life now, and I also did the UI for that. And then, like Layla said, we worked together on the animations, and while we did have the animations for everything we needed, I didn't have some of the programming in, so I had to do a little bit more programming because, as you can see in the top left image, or GIF, there's 2 animations in that one. There's like an idle animation and there's a running animation. So I had to basically program in a slow and fast walk cycle within the programming as well. And the last thing I worked on this sprint was map selection. Map selection is no longer a placebo. You can actually go in, select the map, and it'll spawn your character at that map. So that's what I did this sprint, and I think we're going to have Josh come in and give us some final thoughts.
Yeah, so there's no other slide here, but I won't take up too much time. I'll just say, thanks to everyone who worked on this game. I know everyone had a lot of work on their plate with 495, and just everyone was very busy. But I think, at the end of the day, we pushed out a pretty good product, and I know that everyone's graduating this semester, so, everyone congrats on graduating at this point, and, on to bigger and better things at this point. Bye, guys.